James Luther Adams, probably the most prominent UU theologian of the 20th century, wrote that prophetic congregations are places where people make history instead of being pushed around by it. Most of us spend way too much of our time being pushed around by social forces. At their best, our congregations become laboratories where we can learn how to live in struggle to birth a more just, kind world in which all people have access to what is good. In a moment, you'll hear a few people speak about what it means to take our power seriously and to believe that we can, in fact, change the world.
The prophetic church does the difficult work of truth and reconciliation. It sets a new course that calls people to a higher level of discourse and a higher level of humanity. It casts a vision that illuminates the way like a beam of light and calls us to walk together with fellow travelers to build a new reality. And the prophetic church equips us for the journey. It fortifies our courage, it stokes our passions, it rekindles our flame, and it supports the community in the process. The prophetic church changes itself and a piece of the world by bringing justice and compassion into being, not as a concept or an ideal, but as a real lived experience. And, maybe most importantly, the prophetic church is deemed so by the public and by future generations. So I don't think the people in the room are kind of like, we all want to be seen as a prophetic minister, a prophetic leader, a prophetic congregation, but it's the results of what we do, what's lasting, that will be determined to be prophetic.
It occurs to me, this is my own interpretation of what prophetic church is, that it's something that models ways of being together in a way that's both relevant and leading. So if you're not relevant, then people aren't going to pay attention to you. But if you're not leading, then you're basically just being a product of society instead of actually being prophet. And I mean, our history is wonderful. And we've had historically leaders of the country that were part of our faith tradition, because at that time we were relevant. This country is founded on Enlightenment principles, as our faith is. I mean, our so-called UU Trinity, reason, tolerance, and respect, are Enlightenment principles. But I feel, from my background, that we are now no longer an Enlightenment country. We are a postmodern country. I know that term comes with all baggage, but what it ultimately means is that we are multicultural. There isn't one perspective that is privileged over others, and that has to be reflected. And we have to lead and model that for other people in this country.
The basic point I want to make is that we cannot create prophetic church unless we know who we are. This means we need to be intentional about claiming our religious identity. We need to know why and be able to say why this is religious work. And there really shouldn't be any doubt about this, but a significant number of us, of Unitarian Universalists, resist being identified as religious beings, especially in public. And I think that this resistance cuts us off from our heritage and weakens our prophetic practice. And of course, at a deeper level, the question of religious identity is really a theological question. For me, reclaiming our religious identity means that we need to recover and name, or possibly rename, the core theological principles that ground us as a movement.
I'm Kate Lohr. I'm the Social Justice Minister at First Unitarian Church of Portland. And I've been there for 11 years now. And we're a large urban church. We have a large social justice program, and I benefit from working in a church that sees social justice as central to its mission. I'm often asked to describe, how is it that you do it? I get more phone calls and emails than you'd ever believe. I am often asked to come out to churches and work with people. And what I have found is that what people want from me are actually lists of best practices. What is it? How do you structure your program? What is your governing policies? And how do you distribute your monies? They're asking, I find, actually the wrong questions. I wish that all you had to do was unleash the passion of your people, engage the sacred, and voila, you'd have a prophetic ministry. But the creation of prophetic churches is more difficult than that. If it was that easy, we'd have more of them, and we'd be having a far greater impact on public life. It is important to understand that prophetic ministries are by their very nature contextual, relational, dynamic. They emerge when a congregation responds to an injustice experienced by community members who know and care about each other. The shape of each ministry is ultimately defined by a vast array of factors, including leadership style, mission, access to power and resources, demographics, patterns of oppression, theology, community partnerships, and so forth. It does not take a postmodern mind to grasp why surveys of best practices hold little value. We must go deeper than this. If we are serious about our desire to change our world through the intentional creation of prophetic ministries, we must be willing to commit ourselves to something far more revolutionary than the changing of church policies or the calling of new ministers. What we need in order to change the world is a willingness to change ourselves. We need to embrace the one thing that is already here in all our context. If you're a small church, if you're a large church, if you're a rural church, suburban church, anywhere, it's there already. It's love. Transformative, uniting, healing at every level within ourselves, within our communities. Mountain-moving love. When we learn to translate our beliefs about love into disciplined and concrete action, when we learn to match the power of our minds with the power of our hearts, our prophetic ministries will flourish. We will have discovered that justice is what love looks like when it speaks in public.
As Kate says, this is contextual work. The kind of practical questions she cites are important too, and there are best practices and many other resources on justice making on the UUA website, which I encourage you to look through.